massive blowout winning free play tonight. It's Money Monday, and you know I got to hook you guys up with another blowout winning free play. Now, this free play is from my market moving money flow system, which I'm going to explain in a little bit more detail. And I know last night the free play didn't come through, but I want to stress something before we even get into this. The most important thing in sports betting, the thing that differentiates the winners from the losers, is somebody's ability to ride out variance and ride out when plays don't win. If you aren't willing to actually sit down and be successful over the long run, lose a few plays in a row, or have a downturn, then you aren't able or aren't willing to be successful as well and win a few plays in a row. So with that being said, let's cash out tonight, let's bounce back, and let's win with this free play. Now, first things first, why do most bettors fail? I like to help you guys understand the harsh reality of sports betting. Sports betting is not easy. Sports betting is not for the faint of heart. If you guys actually want to make money with this, you need to have not only a system, but you also need to be able to put all of your emotion to the side, not chase losses, and not be emotional. And that's an incredibly difficult thing to do, right? The harsh reality is that 97% of sports bettors will lose money in the long run. However, that's because of a few main things. First of all, they're lacking of bankroll, which causes them to be very emotional and have very poor risk management. Because if a sports bettor has a $200 bankroll, right, the only way to hit big with that tiny bankroll is to risk it all or go all in, which is just not a very effective strategy, and that's never going to work in the long run. And the second thing is they are extremely emotional with that small bankroll, which causes them to have absolutely no strategy. Because with a strategy, you're risking anywhere from 1% to 3% of your bankroll on any given play, and you actually have a consistently profitable system. So over the months, you grow your bankroll consistently rather than losing it, because you have a money in, money out system that you can actually get behind, because it's backed by data, not by gut feelings or emotions or the lock of the night, whatever it may be. Now, a prime example of this was last night. There was a comment where somebody said, hey, I don't like this pick. And I said, listen, dude, I don't like this pick. I don't not like this pick. I don't really care about this pick. I care about the overall long-term profitability of my strategy, as you can see here. So what is the solution, you may be asking, right? If you want to be a professional, and if you want to be a professional, I would consider myself a professional, or at least somebody that's very systematic. I only focus on having a very proper strategy and a very systematic strategy where every single day it has a replicatable approach where I can say, great, if this specific edge lines up based on the 8 factors that I'm going to go into in this presentation, based on this data points, I can then take a play off that, right? And on top of that, I obviously have proper bankroll management, and I am using something that actually makes a difference in the sports betting market. I'm not using public sentiment. I'm not using TV picks. I'm not using all sorts of random shit. I'm only using things that actually move the market. So the most important thing is, secondly, the capital problem, right? Another reason why most sports bettors will fail is because they lack the bankroll, they lack the capital. And when they don't have the capital to actually bet like a pro, even a 60% win rate will go broke because they don't have the bankroll, which causes them to risk massively. So, for example, a nice thing is if you are betting with under a 20 unit bankroll, right, or you're starting with a 5 unit bankroll, during losing streaks, it's almost guaranteed that you will bust out and you will lose. Like, that's a horrible place to be. So again, if you don't have a big bankroll, right, you need a bigger bankroll to obviously have a larger unit size and have 1% of your bankroll be $1,000 or a few $100s rather than 1% of your bankroll being like $1 or $10. With that, you're able to risk a lot less and make a lot more when you win, and that money will actually mean something to your life because you're playing with a much larger amount, right? So that's the most important thing. Then obviously, if you really want to take this to the professional levels, you need to be able to generate a consistent income, and you're just not going to be able to generate a consistent income on a $10 bankroll or even a few $1,000 bankroll. That's just not going to be replicatable. You need a $100,000 bankroll that you can make 10 or 15% per month, which would be 10 or 15K a month, because that's obviously much more achievable than trying to flip or make a 100% return on investment on a $2,000 bankroll, for example, right? So you need to, and I have a little math graph down here. It's like if you make a 20% ROI on a $1,000 bankroll, you're only making $200. $200 is not changing anybody's life. However, if you're making that same 20% on a $10,000 or $100,000 bankroll, that's now life-changing profit. It was the same picks, the same strategy, the same results. The only difference was the amount of capital that you locked your picks in with, right? So now, what is my edge? What's my strategy? And how am I able to do this? And what does a real edge look like, right? This is not one of your favorite handicappers locks. This is not some BS system, BS AI nonsense. Like, this is the true edge. So where does a real edge come from, right? Professionals and insiders have the real edge. People who have insider information have an edge that other people don't. And when they are locking in their plays, right, they move lines. Now, why is this? On the books, there's a few different types of books. There's sharp books and there's public books. The sharp books will facilitate and allow sharp bettors to have a much better time, right? They'll allow higher limits. The sharp bettors don't get limited as often. There's just a plethora of reasons why a bettor might choose a sharp book rather than a normal one, right? When they are locking in an abnormal play, let's say, for example, everybody's locking in, for example, a play on an MLB game, for example, and an abnormally large amount of money comes in very, very strategically. That is more often than not insider information. That insider knows something about that game, about those lineups, about a certain statistic, about an injury report that nobody else knows. And that is allowing them to have a ton of confidence in their own ability to execute that play and put a ton of money behind it. Because otherwise they wouldn't be putting a ton of money behind it. They might put $10,000, $50,000, whatever. But if people are putting hundreds of thousands of dollars down on these bets, they oftentimes will know something that nobody else does, right? And that information will then move the line. So what do? We are tracking these very subtle line movements on these sharp books to identify plays and patterns where sharp insider bettors are stepping in to take inside plays. Obviously, our system will track that smart money and execute on it. So here we can see in tonight's example, right? 75% of the public money is on the Yankees. Sharp books moved Washington's line from plus 190 to plus 180. Classic reverse line movement against the public. We can see the line, we can see the time that the lines was moving, and we could see the odds. Now, you may say, okay, great, congratulations for the strategy. But here are the verified results from the strategy. Here are the backtest performance over the past 2 years, from 23 to 25. As you can see, we have tracked over 1,200 total plays. We have a 65.4% win rate with a total ROI of 124%. Longest win streak was 17 games, and I think you guys can't see this, but the largest drawdown was only 8% of the overall account balance. So with a 100K bankroll, right now you would have almost doubled, if not, you actually would have doubled your money or a little bit more, right, following our system. Now, what's important to note is you're not 10xing. That's just not realistic, and I would be lying to you if I said that was something that you could do. What you are doing is following a consistently profitable system that gets results. That you can bet on. And when I say bet on, a lot of you guys I know are wanting to escape whatever 9 to 5, or you're not happy where you currently are. If you were following a capper or a system that was boom or bust, and when I say boom or bust, that was double your money, ridiculous, or lose it all. That's not something that you can bet on. That is just gambling. That is guessing. Would you quit your job knowing that next month you could lose your entire bankroll? After having a good month, you double your money, next month you lose your entire bankroll. Of course you wouldn't, because that's not something that you're truly striving for. What you're striving for is the freedom. What you're striving for is making sports betting a consistent, successful thing for you. And to do that, you can't be operating in this boom or bust cycle. The boom or bust cycle is something that's going to cause you a lot of problems down the road. So what do I like to say? This is not hitting home runs. This is hitting base hits consistently. This is what allowed me to live this life, and this is what has allowed all the people that tail the system to live this life as well. But the most important thing is we're not doubling our money every single month. That would be very ridiculous. We are consistently growing our account month after month after month because we're using a strategy that is actually profitable, and not profitable in the sense of your favorite handicapper's profitable strategies that hit 95%. No, that's just a get-rich-quick nonsense scam. We are focused on statistical edges, and I have the backtest obviously shown. And I can go into more depth if you guys want. Just drop a comment. Let me know if you guys want more backtest information. But again, for tonight's play, what are we looking at? What are all the factors that are coming into play? Because I want to explain this to you guys. Right? So first of all, public perception, right? 75% of the public is on the Yankees tonight, but only 25% is back in the Nationals. But what we did see was some sharp line movement from plus 190 to plus 180, which sharp books led the movement. Now, we also have 8 independent factors that go into what we call the UMF score. And the UMF score on this play is 68.9 out of 100, with a 283 basis point edge. Now, I'll go into a little bit more about what the basis point edge means. but it's basically the market probability and what the algorithm's probability is. So depending on how big of the discrepancy, that's where we're finding value. Because the higher the basis point edge, right, the larger the value that we will find on that specific play. Now, what is the signal type? We're seeing a steam move plus contrarian value. So we're seeing a very high confidence pattern. And as you can see, we have the public money, the sharp money graph here. But again, none of this matters at all if you don't have a massive bankroll to lock in your plays. Now, I personally lock in all my plays on SportVest because SportVest is a funding company, right? And I'm not just saying that to say that. I'm saying that because the math is all here for you guys to see. If you operate and if you have variance in your strategy, which every good strategy has variance, right? By the time that you are betting so aggressively with such a tiny bankroll, by the time that you hit some variance or you have a downturn, you have no money to recover. Because an example here is you have a 100K bankroll and you hit a really cold streak, really cold streak. You go down to 50K, at least you have money to recover and start the upward trade. But if you're betting with $1,000 or $10,000, you will be losing, you'd be getting down to pretty much zero. You would lose everything. And obviously, as you know, the lower your bankroll goes, the more risk you have to take to get back to even, right? If you start with $100 and you go down $50, you've lost 50%. But to get back to that $100, you have to now double your money, which is make back 100%. So it gets very, very difficult the lower you go from a percentages game. So you really have a tough time scaling. You can never obviously succeed long term, which is why you obviously need a massive bankroll if you don't know that already. Now, a little bit more on our system, right? I kind of showed you guys the win rate, but the 185 basis points average. So what that basically shows us is consistently we are finding a 185 basis point average, which equates to a 2% all the way up to a 10% edge on any given play, which is the market's implied probability versus our probability. And I know that might sound a bit complex, but it's really simpler than it thinks, right? Based on the market odds, whether that's plus 190, minus 110, whatever, the markets and the books are implying a certain probability of a pick hitting, for example. Whether that's 55%, 60%, 70% for like minus 180s, minus 200s, etc. Each time it becomes the odds change, the market's saying this is the percentage chance that this team has to win. Now, our algorithm, what our system does, is it finds opportunities where the actual market probability is incorrect and there's either more value or less value on that specific play, which is then giving us an edge to say we should bet this play with some heavy size or some light size, for example, because we're finding that edge. So again, what is the ROI of this strategy? What is the monthly performance of this strategy? From an ROI perspective, January, we had almost 20% ROI from our steam moves, 15% ROI from our contrarian plays, and a 12% ROI from our value plays. As you can see, this is kind of the overall monthly performance. Now, profit and generated, the profit that we generated in 2024 was $440,000, and that was assuming a normal unit size. That was just the normal average unit size for our bankrolls. Now, what is the cost of building your own true system? You want to build a system like this. Why are you going to reinvent the wheel, and why are you going to try to build something that works? What I recommend is you should just leverage a profitable system that already exists, like my own. And I don't just say this because, truthfully, it'll take years to build your own profitable system. You're going to need very specialized technical skills, and you're going to need a lot of access to expensive data. And plus, your tuition will cost you tens of thousands of dollars. So it's not really optimal to build your own system. I have spent a lot of time and a lot of investment building my own systems, and I highly recommend. And I would recommend that it's not really worth your time to build your own system when you can just leverage somebody else's and start making money day one rather than having to jump through all these hoops to build your own profitable system, right? So again, if you are not leveraging a massive bankroll, none of this matters, and I cannot reiterate this enough, right? If you are using a 10K bankroll, your annual profit will be minuscule because, again, we're looking at the percentages. If you're averaging a 20, 40, 60% annual ROI, like for this system, it's 120% ROI over the past 2 years, which is like 60% annually. If you're averaging a 60% annual ROI with $10,000 of personal funds, for example, that's $6,000. $6,000 over the years not changing anybody's lives. But you know what would be is if you have $500,000 of funded capital and you make 60%, right? That's a massive, massive gain on your overall bankroll, and that's something that you can actually, leverage. That's life-changing. That's same picks, same analysis, same data, but life-changing difference in the amount of income that you make because you're just obviously using a lot more funds to bet. So tonight, what are we locking in? We're locking in Washington at plus 180. Now, let's look at the line movement specifically, right? We saw the lines shift, and we're seeing the public perception. We're seeing a UMF score of around 70, and we have a 283 basis point average. So if we have a 6.9 out of 10 confidence level, this is a play that I'm going to be locking in with pretty small size. I'm not going to lock this in with like my full $10,000 unit size because, again, this is just the free play. This is just the tip of the iceberg for you guys. I just wanted to give you guys a little insight into my system, first of all, give you guys a little insight into like what I look at on a daily basis. Now, I also have a full slate of plays that I lock in every day, around 3 to 5 plays that I lock in for either my full $10,000 unit size or a smaller $5,000 or $2,500 unit size, depending on obviously how these statistics play into the game. So this is just kind of a taste. And once again, the most important thing is I do not care at all what the outcome of this game is. 0%. If this play wins, great. If this play loses, great. What's most important to me is the overall long-term profitability of my strategy, like I showed here. If my strategy is long-term profitable, that's something that I can bet on. That's data I can get behind to consistently invest in more accounts, to consistently invest in a larger bankroll. If my strategy wins today, loses tomorrow, loses the next day, wins the third day, and it's all over the place, and I don't have a consistent edge, I don't have a long-term profitable system, then that's data that I cannot bet on. And at the end of the day, there's no point in betting on data that is not important. So let's lock this play in. And again, what is the execution plan for tonight, right? The expected value is plus 1.7 units on every unit that you wager, right? And as we're seeing, we need to obviously shop for the best line, bet close to game time, and use proper bankroll management most importantly. Do not over risk, do not over leverage, use proper bankroll management. Lock in this play, drop down in the comments, and let me know. But also, if you guys are interested, I will drop the link to SportVest if you want to obviously grab a funded package. And if you want to work directly with me, one-on-one, tail all the plays that I lock in on a daily basis, tail all the system. You can chat with me. You'll have my personal phone number, and we can chat anytime you want, and pretty much just get an insider look into how a professional sports bettor does what they do. You'll tell all my plays, get all my strategies. You'll get access to your own dashboard with all of these softwares inside of them. So if you want to work one-on-one with me, click the link. You can book a call with me. We can chat more about your goals, about what you're looking to accomplish with sports betting, and how I can help you get there. So anyway, I'll talk to you guys soon.